Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Jobs Fund webinar, where we are exploring the potential of creating digital jobs in our economy. Um, I'm very pleased to be here this afternoon with all of you. Many of you have children, matriculants, and many of you must be wondering what is going to be happening to our children. Where are the jobs? And so I think there's between what is it, 700,000 or even more than that, young people who are going to be writing matric exams. I stand to be corrected on the numbers. The point being that our levels of unemployment is pretty high in South Africa. It has reached crisis levels in our country. We are not creating new jobs in our economy at the speed at which we need to create new jobs in the economy. We are mindful that as new matriculants and university and technical college graduates enter the labor market, it's going to be a massive challenge for them to find employment in our country. And so today we are going to explore whether developing the digital jobs sector provides us with opportunity to create new jobs in our country. I'm joined today by our partners in the Jobs Fund, IT Think, and Rethink Code. They are going to be represented by Setsu Khumani, who is the Chief Commercial Officer at Rethink Code, Raymond Ledwaba, who is the CEO at IT Think, as well as Ntabile Nkora, a creative industry leader. I have heard and seen, and the presenters will tell you more, that as by way of example, the US gaming market size is estimated at 57 billion rand, and it's going to be increasing. It also offers a significant number of job opportunities in the sector. Now, I know that in South Africa, we definitely have the talent, yes? And so surely the challenge before us is to see how we can gain market share in this thriving sector. So we're going to explore this with our partners this afternoon, how we can grow this particular sector, but also importantly, what the challenges are that they have experienced, and then, for all of us to be able to reflect, no matter where we are, whether we are in government, whether we are within NGOs, no matter where we operate from, if there are barriers, is there anything that we can do in order to address those barriers so that we can create more opportunity for sustainable job creation in a sector that shows great potential. I also have to advise you that you have been muted as the participants this afternoon, and I'm going to invite you to post your questions in the chat, and there's a team who will monitor the chat and respond. However, at the end of the session, there will be opportunity for you to be unmuted and ask your questions directly. We are also going to ask you to respond to our evaluation to see whether you found this webinar useful or not. Then, of course, we are going to be your host for the rest of this afternoon is Zaid Mutala. He works within our legal unit, but he is a facilitator extraordinaire, and I'm going to hand over to him now to take you through the rest of the afternoon. Thank you, Zaid, and welcome, everybody.
Thank you so much, Najwa, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. Now, I need to take a deep breath in clear my throat and let it out because we are about to embark on a journey, my friends, the likes of which you have rarely experienced before. Now, our conversation today is really about how do we delve into the exciting world of digital opportunities? And we are going to focus a little bit on coding and the game development industries, particularly for this conversation. Now, as South Africa continues its journey towards digital transformation, these sectors, like Najwa quite correctly pointed out, are emerging as key drivers of job creation and, of course, economic growth. So we're going to have some amazing discussions over the course of the next little while, and we are literally going to plug you into the matrix as you start to explore these new ideas. Now, I do have an ask from you. As many of you would know, presenting like this without the benefit of a live audience can sometimes be a little bit daunting. So if you hear our speakers say something you like, I want you to applaud. If you hear them say something that you love, I want you to send those heart emojis, and let's keep that conversation going in the chat as well. I see a couple of those emojis coming in. Thank you so much to the one or two people who are showing the love. Very, very grateful for you. I do note hands being raised, as Najwa indicated. When we get to the end of the segment, we will have questions and answers. And at that point, I will invite you into the conversation. But for right now, what I invite you to do is take a seat, relax a little bit, but not too much, as we get ready to bring the thunder and do the things. But, I would be remiss in my duty as a facilitator if I didn't take at least a few minutes to talk a little bit about how we arrived here. In other words, who is the Jobs Fund? What do we do? How do we do it? And why do we do it? So with that, let's go to the next slide. Of course, as you arrive here, I invite you to tell us a little bit about yourselves and let us know where you're from, what you do, and all of that good stuff. This might prove to be a very, very unique opportunity to actually network and get to know more about the people that you're sharing the audience floor with. Now, the Jobs Fund. So working at the Jobs Fund is one of the great joys in my life because what we do is we pilot, we test, and we scale. I want you to keep those three in mind as we go through the conversation. Now, we were established in 2011 and we were capitalized with an amount of 9 billion rands. And we were set up as what is called a challenge fund. And our work involves supporting sustainable job creation interventions in the short to medium term. And we do this by identifying scalable, replicable, and sustainable job creation models that ultimately lay the foundation for longer term employment. And that's part of the reason why we have chosen these two projects to actually look into, because we genuinely believe that between the gaming ecosystem, that is the development, the production, etc., as well as coding, which you'll hear about from our friends at We Think Code, there's definitely a lot of potential here to do something magnificent, and that's what we're really about. Now, our funding mechanism is that of a challenge fund, like I said. And what that means is we really do require persons or organizations to compete really for some truly scarce public resources, finance that is. And in that way, we get the best of the absolute best. And once we partner with them, these implementing partners or intermediaries, as some people would call them, what we do is we share risk by leveraging their networks, their funding, their technical expertise. And all of this is ultimately to provide support to the target market segment. Now, a little bit of a misunderstanding about our work, the role we play, is this misunderstanding or perspective that we are a mass employer or employment driver. We are not. What we do, though, is that we play a complementary role in the social protection and employment landscape. In other words, through our piloting, testing, and scaling, we ultimately assist in developing industries to actually facilitate the job creation that will come later and down the line. So it is hard work, but it is honest work. It is wonderful work. And we like to share the results of our work. So what we also have is a real lens and a real focus on knowledge sharing. It's one of our foundational pillars. And as a result, we have pretty rigorous monitoring, evaluation, and reporting frameworks, all of which culminate in a much larger learning framework. And in that vein, and against that background, we then host regular knowledge-changing sessions, such as this webinar. And if you would like to know more about the Jobs Fund, the work we do, and all of that great stuff, I invite you to check out our social media. Of course, go to our website and our YouTube channel, where you can see some of our previous webinars, and the learning continues there, which is as good a segue as any to tell you that you shouldn't worry. This entire presentation and all of that good stuff will be made available slightly later. So what I want you guys to do is to really focus on the learning that's going to take place. And like I said, let's open up our minds, let's open up our hearts to the possibilities of what lies ahead. Now, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, if you're ready to go, I'm ready to go. Let's see those emojis there. If you are ready to start meeting our speakers so we can bring the thunder and start doing this thing. Let's see those emojis, everybody. Yes, man, that's what I'm talking about. So with that being said, let's move over to the next slide. And I want to break down for you how this is going to work. For the first part of this, I am going to introduce you to two speakers. Their names are Raymond Ledwaba and, of course, Ntabeleng Pora. I'm going to tell you about them in a moment. And a little later, after this presentation, we have one more speaker, and her name is Setu Kumane. Now, each and every one of them are absolute pioneers in their respective fields. And I want to tell you a little bit more about the people that we are bringing into this conversation, because here at the Jobs Fund, this is going to be a terrible joke, we don't play games here. So ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker, he is a visionary, he is a virtuoso, he is the vanguard. His name is Raymond Ledwaba, who is a chartered accountant with an MBA from the University of Cape Town. And in 2017, he realized that, listen, there is a gap over here. There is something that we are not thinking about. We are not thinking enough about the future. And as a result of that, he transitioned into an entrepreneurship role and is now the CEO of IT Think Smart Solutions. IT Think Smart Solutions is an award-winning software development and consulting firm. And what they also do is run an in-house tech academy that provides skill development for unemployed youth in South Africa. Now, as recently as 2021, Raymond co-founded the IT Think Gaming. This is a division within the larger IT Think. And what this does is it supports young gamers with funding, mentorship, training, and all in all develops South African-inspired video games for local and global audiences. You're going to hear more from Raymond momentarily. The next speaker that we will introduce you to is, of course, Ntabeleng Pora. And Ntabeleng Pora, she is a light in the tunnel. She is a breath of fresh air. She is everything that we need in the country, because she has spent the last 16 years in the creative industry with a particular focus on film and television. And as you're going to hear slightly later, that background of film and television actually lends itself into the larger ecosystem that manifests in the gaming world. But more on that just now. What you need to know for right now, though, is, of course, that Ntabeleng is the holder of an MBA and specializes in film distribution, and also has qualifications in corporate governance and risk management. Now, Ntabeleng specializes in tackling industry challenges with a well-rounded perspective. She has, of course, collaborated with many government bodies and, of course, the creative sector to use her project management skills to drive initiatives in audience development, distribution, in film festivals, thus positioning South Africa as a premier film destination, rather. Now, the reason why we have chosen these two speakers to start us out is that they are going to contextualize for us the larger industry, all the magic that's going out there, and they are going to do it right about now. Ladies and gentlemen, let's see some love there with those emojis for Mr. Raymond Ledwaba. Like I said, the man, the myth, the legend. Raymond, over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Zaid. It's a pleasure to be here, colleagues. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about the gaming industry in South Africa and the consortium that we formed to approach the Jobs Fund and, apply for funding to grow the sector. So I'm representing AfriGames Consortium. It's a consortium made up of 6 organizations. So the lead applicant and the lead in the consortium is IT Think Gaming, which is a company that I run. And our partners and colleagues are Africa Games Week, which you'll hear a little bit about later in the presentation. We've got Wits University Incubator, which is part of our consortium. It's known as Tsimolochong. Leaders in Motion Academy, Spielfabrik, which is based in Germany, and the Academy of Digital Arts, which is based in Cape Town. So collectively, we have pooled funding together And we have then applied for Jobs Fund, and we're very grateful to have been awarded a grant by the Jobs Fund to develop the gaming industry in South Africa over the next 2 years. So if you go to the next slide, please, you will see exactly who our partners are and the work that we focus on. So as indicated, ITthink Gaming, we are building the ecosystem. So we provide various services, ecosystem development, project management services, outsourcing work. And then we work with various partners such as Tshimologong. Tshimologong is based in Braamfontein and runs various incubation programs in the tech space. And a couple of years ago, they launched a gaming hub, and we were very privileged to have worked with Tshimologong in setting that gaming hub up. So Tshimologong, in this program that we're running with the Jobs Fund, is going to be incubating about 6 SMMEs over the next 2 years. And these are very young gaming studios that are mostly run by graduates from Wits University, as well as non-graduates and self-taught young people who want to build companies in the gaming industry. Our other partner is Academy of Digital Arts. They're based in Cape Town. It's a school approved by the Department of Higher Education, and it offers higher certificates for young people who want to study game development and game design. And in this program with the Jobs Fund, we're providing bursaries to young people who are interested in, learning about the industry. Spielfabrik, as indicated, is our partner from Germany, and because of where we are as an industry in South Africa and the fact that the gaming industry is still in its infancy, when we formed the consortium, it was quite important for us to work with partners that are a bit more advanced than we are. So Spielfabrik is based out of Germany, and Europe is a bit more advanced in terms of the industry, the gaming industry. So the idea is Spielfabrik, which is an accelerator, is providing mentorship and international market access for our beneficiaries. And then Leaders in Motion Academy, it's a digital academy that focuses on a number of things. So gaming, animation, and film for township and rural kids. For the project, and this particular project, they are bringing their film skills in the project, and they're helping us tell our story, which is very important to do. So Leaders in Motion Academy is filming a documentary about the project and about the gaming industry in South Africa. And budget permitting, we can extend that and talk about the gaming industry on the continent. And our last partner is Africa Games Week. It's an industry events and networking platform for young game developers and professionals. Africa Games Week brings international and local investors and publishers, as well as people who are working in the games industry. So this is our consortium, colleagues. We officially kicked off on the 1st of May, and collectively we seek to create about 152 jobs, train 121 young people, incubate 6 startups, and film a documentary. Next slide, please. So why is this gaming industry so important? There's a number of reasons why this industry should not be ignored, and we're grateful that the Jobs Fund heard our plea to support this fledgling industry in South Africa. So firstly, before I go into the careers in gaming, I just want to state that the games industry globally is bigger than the film industry and the music industry combined. So this is an industry that can create quite a lot of jobs. And because the industry focuses on the technology side, so the STEAM or the STEM fields, but it also focuses on the art side. So it's a very broad STEAM, mixed medium career. So there's various careers that are available for young people and anyone really who wants to get into this space. So we're talking about game development. So obviously a game is a piece of software. So you need programmers and coders who are going to write the code. But before they write the code, there's someone who needs to design the game, because it's ultimately a game. There's a number of gamification principles, there has to be a challenge, there has to be a reward, there has to be a game loop that keeps you coming back and playing the game. So we've got game developers, and then you've got 2D and 3D artists that draw the characters, and somebody has to animate it. So you can already see how broad, and then there's music and sound involved. And then we've got, obviously, a game is not just the game, it's a piece of IP that is a company. So in putting all of this thing together, there's project managers that manage the end-to-end process, and producers and quality assurance testers. And the big bucks, obviously, we're not developing these games just for fun. These are commercial enterprises. So we need people who are going to market and commercialize the game. So we need marketing professionals. And then lastly, or second to last, there's a big opportunity in the content space. So we develop these games. There are people who play them professionally, and there are people who make a lot of content out of these games. So there's esports players, esports managers, and streamers, and there's quite a lot of money in that space. So when your kids are saying they're playing games, don't just think that they can't make money out of this. They can really make serious money, either making the game or playing the game. And then lastly, from a non-tech perspective, a video game is a piece of art, and there is a story in a game. So we need writers, and hence the collaboration with people from the film industry, because if you can write for a film, you can also write for a game. And then the boring work, like me as an accountant, is quite also important, because the finances are key, and legal and HR. Next slide, please. All right, so as indicated in the beginning, the gaming industry in South Africa is still quite small. So there was a market study done by Tsimologong in 2021 to understand the South African landscape. And what the study found is that in South Africa, there's about 6 to 10 companies that are really sustainable in the gaming industry, that create more than 10 jobs and that make revenues from video games. Either it's a game that they have developed and they're selling, or it's a service that they provide to international gaming companies. So our industry is still in its infancy from a producer perspective, but from a consumer perspective, we've got 26 million people who play video games. The industry in South Africa generates 5 billion rands in revenues annually. And this is why it's so important that we are just not consumers, but we build the industry and we train young people to make games and make sustainable games. So if you look at a mature market, such as the United States, the DDG indicated the size of the industry in the US. It's about a $57 billion industry, and it's growing. And by 2029, it's going to be $90 billion. And in terms of number of jobs created, this is an industry that sustains about 260,000 jobs. Imagine those jobs being here in South Africa. And for those who play games, you would recognize companies such as EA. I am a big FIFA, and it's now EAFC. And there are other companies like Activision Blizzard, which was acquired by Microsoft for quite a lot of $1 billion. So these companies obviously exist in the US, and they help sustain the industry, because if you've got big companies in the industry that make sustainable games and games that make money, what tends to happen is that the people with those skills after a while leave their jobs and then go into the indie space, we call, the SMME space, and they then start building their own games. And when they do that, they are very skilled. They've worked on games that have shipped and that make money. So that skill is able to transfer. This is what's really missing in South Africa at the moment, but it's going to happen over time, is that we need to ensure that we have big gaming studios, big corporates in the space. And then those corporates will then be able to, over time, unleash this talent of very skilled people who then set up their own businesses. That's at least the hope. And obviously in the United States, the education pipeline is quite strong for tech roles. So whether it's at a university level and also the industry itself then tends to feed other industries. So it's not just the skills that are in gaming are untransferable, they are very much transferable. So yeah, this is a little bit about the US market. I'm now going to pause and hand over to my colleague Nthabeleng, who will take you through the rest of the presentation. Thank you very much. Over to you, Nthabeleng.
Thank you so much, Ray. I've been responding on the chats as well as you've been speaking. Can you please just take me through to the next slide, please? Thank you so much. So what I will be focusing on is really the interest in early development and skills development within the sector. This is to encourage how we can transfer skills from one space into another. This is us ensuring that people do not only think that gaming skills can only limit them only to gaming and they cannot use them anywhere else. And this obviously is to encourage the love for STEAM subjects. Obviously, this is for coding, mathematics, physics, and problem solving, because of that's what really gaming does. It's really solve a lot of problems and also personal and interpersonal skills that one can gain. This obviously also is creating an outlet that it also includes of art classes, storytelling, music productions for those that are interested in game design and game audios. So there is always a relationship that we also need sound designers and sound scoring, which then obviously then also contribute to the story. Extra curriculum, which is obviously our robotics, learning in coding clubs, but also our game competitions, because of this is where we are exposing gaming as a career, including the platforms that we have, which then involve Roblox as well as the Minecraft for early exposure into the gaming sector. So the encouragement to team-based activities will then develop the leadership, communication, and collaboration skills. Obviously, this includes ensuring that we attract not only the buyers, but we also have collaboration with the investors, publishers, as well as distributors. This is outside of the online and offline partnership. So we also encourage playing of games, because of then playing of games also has its own advantages around problem solving, around confidence, around idea generation as well. Thank you. Can you go to the next session? Yes, transferability of skills includes skills that are beyond just the game creation. This is us being able to transfer skills such as coding, project management, creative design, which can also crisscross in between as careers, obviously including we can't do without finance. So financing, legal, tech, entertainment, reducing the risk of unemployment and opening doors to diverse careers. So at this point, this is where you look into critical skills, but ensuring that the programming and the technical experts of coding and software, IT, automation is forming part of a skill that can be used not only in gaming, but also in other sectors as well. This is data analysis. You can also use this one in banks, in research programs, in research work. So we really need data in gaming as well to understand who are our buyers, what do they want, what do they seek, and vice versa. What are we creating and where is it intended for? When you look at creative designs and visual arts, then you obviously talk about your animation skills, which are then transferable into film. They are transferable in music videos. They are transferable in gaming. They are transferable in commercials. They are transferable in presentations. So really, these are the skills that they can be transferred in different and multiple careers. This obviously includes the experience in UX design. And once we're looking at customer engagement and community management, is including the skills that are community gaming and ensuring that the customer supports the translation into roles between social media management, digital marketing, crisscrossing as well into the customer relations and promotional and public relations. Can we go into the next slide? So the role really of the Jobs Fund in empowering the gaming industry is looking at the much needed support into the gaming industry, which is often overlooked by tradition. You know, that return on investment focus on investors, as well as our venture capitals and firms due to the perceived risk. And I think there is really, it comes as a point that gaming is not looked at as a career, but it's looked at as a game, as a part of entertainment. But nobody's really talking about who are making these games and how do we have the games being where we are as players. But you know, the purpose of the Jobs Fund is really to reignite the conversation to say, let's talk about gaming as a career. Let's not talk about gaming only as a player. And I think this is where the Jobs Fund's empowering of the gaming industry comes in, because of then we look at the multifaceted and the phases of the gaming from the inception, obviously, to the distribution, which is where we are talking about our supply and demand. The South African gaming industry is still in early stages, facing obviously a lot of challenges. We do know that from the study that is conducted by the Win report states that currently the studios that we have are employing 6 to 8 employees to create the games, because one, the industry is still young. Two, there is a lack of senior level skills, which we currently need in the sector. Three, it's doing work and prototypes that can attract international investment for venture capitalists to really support the prototypes that we are doing. And obviously, this is where it comes to a point where the Jobs Fund is helping manage that risk, to de-risk the problems that we have in creating an environment where innovation can strive. And the Job Fund really is enabling the sector to ensure that we are just going beyond Cape Town. But I also need to express that, you know, there is research that Cape Town is currently leading in terms of the ecosystem of gaming. Johannesburg is next. Durban is trying to pick up, but you know, we are doing fairly well in the continent. So in the continent, we are also number 3. We are in the top 3, including Nigeria and Kenya, whilst Ghana and Singapore, they are also in the midst and joining the crew. So it also shows that, you know, once South Africa is also becoming one of the top 3 in gaming, it means there is something that somebody is saying, which we need to really leverage on and capitalize. So the key focus on diversifying the workshop really is to ensuring that by training and professionalizing the skill in gaming, will make sure that we have development into our talent, in particularly ensuring that we've got people in color so that different story and diverse stories could be told, and ensuring that, you know, we make the best of what we have, but also show our pride in gaming as well and tell authentic stories that show who we are as South Africans. Next slide, please. And I come to this exciting event, which I would love and invite everybody that is also in our guests in the line. We've got the Joburg Game Festival. I am the steering committee member who is here to also promote this event that is happening this Saturday on the 26th at the Kute Institute. The event is meant to collaborate business to business, conferences, workshops, and, you know, strengthening the ecosystem of the skills that we have in Gauteng, that are currently doing gaming, businesses that are doing gaming in the province. So this is a relationship where, as a sector, we felt that all the time when there are events in Cape Town, majority of the people that are filling the halls in Cape Town are from Johannesburg, but we do not know each other. So the Joburg Games Fest is there to really close that gap, to understand who we are as gamers in Gauteng, so that we are able to also start collaborating on a provincial level. And I really need to then also share the information that after the Joburg Game Festival, which is happening on the 26th, we will be then going to the Cape Town that I'm talking about, which is then attending with our partners Africa Games Week, which is obviously one of the big business events that are happening in Africa, which really the aim of Africa Games Week is to ensure that they are collaborating workshops, business to business meetings, seminars and conferences to ensure that we are really strengthening the gaming industry. But we really have to look into how do we then start having conversations around gaming being a career choice, and ensuring, in both these events, we need to then have our venture capitals, our investors, institutions really, who will give out education and skills on the scarcity of the skills gap that we are seeing in the sector, and really try to begin and creating a solid ecosystem that will really allow people to really enter the gaming industry as a career option. And yes, we really want people to continue playing, because of then how will we get paid if we are creators and nobody's paying? So we also want to encourage people playing, but we cannot also talk about gaming without talking about also creating quality work that players will also appreciate. And this is why we have to then ensure that, quality assurance and quality management of the work that we are also producing is acceptable to the audiences which we're trying to serve. And with those words, thank you so much.
Oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can certainly do better than that. Let's see more love, more applause there in that, in those reactions. Wow. So, I said to you earlier that I wanted you to plug into the Matrix first. And any fans of the franchise would know that going into the Matrix isn't such a good idea. You want to be free of the Matrix. And that's what this conversation is about today. When we think about job creation, when we think about the South African employment space, I mean, I think we've all been coached into thinking in certain ways about it. But our conversation today is really about opening ourselves out to more possibilities, to whole new ecosystems that exist. And I am loving the engagement and the conversation going on there in the comments. I note that there are some fairly detailed ones there. So what I'm going to do is a slight departure from the way we normally do things. I'm actually going to knock on Raymond's door one more time and call him back into the conversation. And I would like him to just in general address overall the space, because what I note is that a lot of the questions deal with, okay, listen, here in South Africa at this particular point in time, we are seeing certain trends, we are seeing that the market looks like this, and how do we adjust that? But what your project is really about is taking the best of what South Africa has and actually opening it out to the world. So noting that, the conversation will still go on there with the chat, is there anything that you would like to introduce into the conversation at this point in response to some of those questions?
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to type out my responses, and I've seen there's been questions around business models and questions around, how are the games in South Africa making money and how do we help them scale locally, internationally? So maybe I'll just touch on that. So the gaming ecosystem has, various business models. So you've got a freemium business model. This typically works more for mobile games where your game is free and to download and play. And at a later stage, you introduce in-app purchases, you introduce advertising, and, long-term, you can then have subscriptions. So that's a business model that we're trying to pursue, particularly with telcos, because what we've seen with a number of the telcos in South Africa is that they have gaming stores on their platforms, because if you think about what a telco, your MTNs, Vodacoms of this world, Cell Cs, what they really want is people consuming data. And that data then needs to be translated into people then consuming content. So there's a lack at the moment of South African developed games on those platforms, and they're currently seeking that content overseas. So that's a sustainable revenue stream that we are pursuing. But the challenge right now, obviously, is a matter of content and volume. How many games are you able to provide these telcos? Because they can easily go overseas and buy bulk content. They're not really interested in buying one game or two games. So that's a revenue stream that if we get our project right, we've got large customers waiting for us. It's a matter of skill. It's a matter of demonstrating that we've developed enough, momentum, and we can provide these telcos with 100 games, 200 games, 1,000 games at a go every year going forward. Because if we land that and we do that, we're able then to have a really sustainable gaming industry. And then the other basic business model is a very easy one to understand. It's pay per copy of a game, or you pay per download of a game, because nowadays games are being sold on digital stores. It's rare to go into a physical store and buy a CD of the game that you will then play on your computer or play on your console being Xbox, PlayStation, and the likes. So those are very easy to understand business models. Most South African game developers and game studios are pursuing the pay per download model. It's easy to, once you put your game on the store, it's an algorithm issue. If you're able to figure out the algorithm of these stores, so for people who play computer games, they would typically buy their games on Steam, and obviously it's an international play. Everybody around the world puts their games there. And so you're competing with everybody around the world. You're not just competing with game developers in South Africa. But if you're able to crack the algorithm that's going to lift your game into the top 10, whether that's through marketing or whether that's just through quality of your game and the things that you notice players want, then you are able to get a lot of people to see your game, and then they will pay per download, and then you've made your money. You can then focus on building other games, and then the person has the copy of the game, and then they play it until the end. So yeah, I hope that makes sense.
I think it really does. Thank you so much, Raymond. And I think the point that Raymond makes here is a critical one. What we are talking about here today is the exploration of a brand new ecosystem. And maybe brand new is not the right term, but a fairly nascent ecosystem, at least over here in South Africa, and most certainly Africa as a whole. Now, the thing over here is that what can you do today to actually help us to keep turning the dial, as it were, or to put the on switch, as it were. Now, the Jobs Fund has partnered with our friends from IT Think, for example, with the project that we are currently involved in. I think Raymond made the point in the comments that they are about 5-6 months into implementation, so still very, very new. Now, what this requires is, I have said to you right at the beginning, we pilot, we test, and we scale models. So in other words, we test the best of the best to see how do we grow this bigger. And that's where you all come in, ladies and gentlemen. What I invite you to do is, first and foremost, check out these two events. So we've got the Joburg Games Fest coming up. I think it's this weekend on the 26th of October. And then, of course, slightly later this year, there's the Africa Games Week. Both of these I don't want to say activations, but both of these events actually have some of the best minds coming together to actually talk about what needs to happen in the industry next. That's thing number one. Thing number two, what you need to do right now, ladies and gentlemen, not right now because I want you to watch the rest of our feature presentation, but after this is I need you to go and follow us on social. So head on out to our YouTube channel. You will see the rest of our webinars there, and also follow our partners, namely IT Think, and of course, I'm going to introduce you to WeThink Code momentarily, so you can keep up to date with all of the amazing things that they are doing to actually galvanize more support for this particular industry or this particular segment, or sector rather. Now, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, once again, just a reminder of those house rules. Don't forget to keep those questions coming. I am loving the discussions because this is actually a means and way for all of us to learn, and that's really what the Jobs Fund is all about. Now, if you are ready to meet our next speaker and you want to kick this thing off, let me see those emojis coming in over there, because if you're ready to go, I'm ready to go. Let's get plugged in, ladies and gentlemen, as we move into the Next slide. Now, Nonhlanhla, I do see you. We will come back to you later. But right now, though, I want to introduce you to somebody who has simply just blown my mind away. Her passion and her insight into her industry, it's just so inspiring. Her name, of course, is Sethu Khumani. So Sethu Khumani, she is a pioneer, she is a prodigy, she is a powerhouse, and ultimately what she does is acts as the chief commercial officer for our friends at We Think Code. Now you're going to learn more about We Think Code momentarily. I was in love with this project from the moment I read the application, and I fall more in love with it with each passing quarter. Now what Sethu does is, well, Sethu holds an MBA from the University of Cape Town's Graduate School of Business, and she applies her strategic insight and business acumen to drive strategic partnerships across the private and public sectors. That, my friends, is what we call a pause for dramatic effect, because what's going to happen is, as Sethu unpacks her presentation, you're going to see why these strategic partnerships are so critical. Now, Sethu's efforts are focused on unlocking opportunities to fund and support the organization's mission of empowering African youth through technology education. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I promised Sethu that I have an amazingly engaged audience here. I promised her that you guys are going to come in with incredible questions. You guys are going to share your insights. And most of all, I promised her that there will be a lot of love and excitement from each and every one of you. So ladies and gentlemen, as I introduce you, Sethu Khumani, the Chief Commercial Officer for We Think Code. Let's see those reactions coming. Ladies and gentlemen, I hand you over to Sethu. Sethu, over to you.
Much, Zaid, for that lovely introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. As Zaid mentioned, I'm Sethu, and I'm going to talk to you a bit about the work that we're doing with the Jobs Fund, which is aiming to bridge youth to work through the training that we do at We Think Code. So a bit about We Think Code before I get into the detail of the program. We've been around since 2016. We are a software development training academy, and our main mission is to make quality tertiary level tech education accessible to the majority of South Africans. And so we essentially position ourselves as an academy that's able to identify talent within spaces and communities and amongst NEET youth who otherwise would be excluded from participating in getting this future-focused skills. And we essentially then work with them over the course of 16 months to train them how to program, get them work ready. And then we place them into employment as software developers and engineers amongst our industry partners who hire from us. And so next slide, please. I'll take you through our model and methodology for doing this. And so, as I mentioned, our mission is to shift South Africa from the consumption to the creation of tech, and that's a critical part of creating the tech job, the digital jobs that the Jobs Fund, and we're all speaking about today, is making sure that we have the right human capital to fill up those jobs. And so, as We Think Code, our model focuses, I guess, similarly to the Jobs Fund, on 3 specific things, and that is to recruit, to train, and to place. And so on the recruitment side, our main focus is recruiting unemployed youth into the foundational phase of the software development training program. And so in the first kind of 12 months of the training, we are equipping them with the skills to be able to build up sufficient fundamentals and know-how to be able to build on top of that the specialized skilling that we've now been able to deliver through our partnership with the Jobs Fund. Also at the recruitment phase, our main endeavor is inclusion. And so 60% of our student body, about 60% of them don't have prior coding knowledge. 90% of them are coming from low-income households, with the majority of them actually coming from extreme low-income households, earning less than 75,000 rands per annum. And the great thing about the work that we do is that the program actually enables them and empowers them to get into jobs that are very highly lucrative. And I'll get into more of that detail a bit later in the presentation. And so on the recruitment side, it's all about accessibility, inclusion, and diversity and accessibility. So on the training, we train students within the program that we're doing with the Jobs Fund. We're training students in specialized electives. And so with the Jobs Fund, we've been able to introduce 3 new electives, which include data engineering, cloud development, and blockchain. And so with these specialized skills, after they've built up their fundamentals, we're now able to give them skills that are industry relevant and very much specialized. And so once they've gained their broader software development skills, they're now able and empowered to get skills that actually prime them and prepare them to enter the industry. And then lastly, we focus on placing graduates into internships, which is a critical part of a young person's journey in South Africa to accessing permanent job and employment opportunities. Next slide, please. And so in terms of the program impact, the problem statement is split up into 3 main parts. And so identifying the fact that limited work experience excludes young South Africans from accessing upwardly mobile jobs. And so as I mentioned, as part of our model, that internship process is quite critical in transitioning young people from unemployment to employment. Also, we're looking at the fact that some outdated technical curriculums are not matching industry needs. And so at We Think Code, because we are a private entity, a nonprofit organization, we've been able to build up our own curriculum alongside South African developers who have a minimum of 25 years of experience and who have been running teams, writing academic pieces of work in their space of expertise, consulting for large companies for years and years, and so know and understand exactly what the industry needs are, and have integrated that into the curriculum. And then lastly, it's identifying that there are some outdated hiring practices for technical skills. I think South Africa at the moment, priority is and preference is often given to those who have bachelor's degree, BSc in computer science. And obviously in South Africa, where we have about 6% of the population earning degrees, it's not sustainable for us to rely on degreed qualifications to be the only way into tech jobs. And so our solution towards that is looking at training industry relevant specialized skills, and then also offering this within a work simulated environment. And so a unique thing about We Think Code is that we don't have lectures. We train our young people in a peer-to-peer learning environment where they have to build up the skills to be able to work in teams, to collaborate, to communicate, to present, and articulate technical concepts to non-technical people, because that's what primes them for work. And then secondly, providing short-term internships to expose both the employees to alternative pipelines to reshape their perspectives, and also give young people that initial work experience that's needed to transition. And so ultimately, the impact of the work that we're doing alongside the Jobs Fund meets a lot of the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals criteria, which is quality education, industry and innovation, as well as decent work and economic growth through job placement. Next slide, please. And so the key milestones of our program with the Jobs Fund is, as mentioned, the introduction of new electives that are developed by industry experts. And essentially, what this means is that we're able to better identify work and employment opportunities for our graduates as we are able to give them more specialized skills that link directly to the needs, the varying needs of the industry. Secondly, key milestones at the moment is that we have created these electives, and now we've enrolled over 400 students into these electives. Additionally, to mention, the Jobs Fund has partnered with us to make our assessments within 3 other electives more robust. And so again, it's an investment that is being made in making sure that our young people are prepared and ready and knowledgeable and able and equipped with the skills needed to thrive in their internships and job placements beyond. And then lastly, we've been able to currently, for the pipeline in January 2020, 2025, been able to secure 72 internship opportunities and counting. Next slide, please. And so looking at the challenges and the potential of the space that we operate in, right now, the main constraint, there's a supply and demand challenge within the market of software developers, digitally skilled human resources. And so when we're looking at the constraint on the supply side, currently there's about 9,000, over 9,000 young people that are coming out of universities with a BSc in computer science. Currently, we're looking at a TVET system that last reported about a 3.9% throughput rate of young people coming out of their NCV4 in ICT. And this is juxtaposed an industry that is actually demanding about 40,000 young people, well, entry-level jobs that need to be filled. And so we're currently in a South Africa where, despite the opportunity in digital transformation, we're still not quite there yet in terms of adequately capacitating our industries with the skills that they need to be able to compete. And so what's happening is that money is leaving the South African economy. And so it's estimated that about 8 to 10 billion rands is leaving South Africa annually, so that industry partners that are pressurized to perform and to compete at a digital level are looking for these skills elsewhere in the world, because right now there isn't sufficient supply to meet their demands. And again, likewise, this is all happening in South Africa, where we have a 4.5% youth unemployment rate. And so there's a huge potential for us to unlock some of that opportunity by taking the young people that are currently unemployed and pipelining them through training programs outside of the traditional institutions to be able to have the skills to take up those jobs. And so the potential essentially equates to about 11.5 billion in annual earnings if we filled in those 40,000 unfilled jobs, and about 1.2 billion in income tax revenue, because if we'd met that potential. And so essentially, by bringing all this together, we'd be able to unlock the employability potential of young people and grow the economy and keep pace with the digital transformation that's happening globally. Next slide, please.
Yes. Thank you so much, Sethu. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, let's see those emojis there. Let's get excited. This was one of those conversations that made my heart flutter a little bit. And I'll tell you why. It's because what we've learned over the last little while is that, listen, there's potential. Not only is there potential for us to do amazing things worldwide, but there's also potential for us to do that from where we are. In other words, between these two initiatives, right, what we have learned is that our youth, where they are, notwithstanding the challenges that are uniquely South African, as Najwa pointed out earlier in the presentation, what we are able to do is, by supporting initiatives like this, we are able to literally and figuratively plug into a much larger ecosystem, a much larger economy. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is my favorite part of every webinar we do, and that is where we get to have conversations, discussions, and of course, address questions. Now, given the sheer number of people that are here with us today, there are going to be a few housekeeping rules, right? So first and foremost, what I need for you to do is to please make use of the raise hand emoji. Raise your hand and I will acknowledge you and invite you into the conversation in order to allow as many people as possible to get into the conversation. My humble plea and request is that you ask the question. Just ask the question. Try to refrain from trying to frame it or qualify it or anything like that. Let's get right into the meat and potatoes, as it were, so we can actually get as much benefit as we can out of the segment. Now, I'm going to invite my presenters to switch on cameras and unmute as we get ready, if at all possible. And for purposes of bandwidth, if you find that it is getting a little bit sketchy, you're welcome to disconnect. So I am going to take advantage of facilitator privilege and ask the first question, one that has been breaking my brain, because in as much as I'm in love with the fact that the Jobs Fund, through its 11 core, found the two of you, the two organizations, IT Think and of course We Think Code, and we are invested in your projects and therefore starting to catalyze the change that we need. It makes me realize, the conversation today has made me realize that there's a lot more that needs to be done. There's way too much that's missing. So I guess the question for me is, what are the easy wins from here? Larger government, as it were. What can we do as a whole to actually help take advantage of all the potential this whole ecosystem has? Open question.
I think for me, the fact that firstly, government has taken note of the gaming industry is a huge achievement for the industry itself. And I think what's likely going to happen is that there's going to be spillovers based on, I suppose the ethos of the Jobs Fund being to pilot, test, and scale. We're building this pilot. Then we're going to put the products in the market and test, and there's going to be positive and negative feedback. We're going to keep on improving. And as we scale, what I foresee happening is that from the gaming industry, there's going to be synergies and government taking note and supporting other industries such as animation, because these two industries are so close to each other. And of course, with our colleagues from We Think Code and other platforms that are training young people and giving them these coding skills, as indicated, these skills are so transferable, So for me, it's quite a big deal that the Jobs Fund has supported this project in the gaming space. It's the first time, by the way, national government takes note of the gaming industry. So for me, I'm super excited about that.
Come on, ladies and gentlemen, I think we deserve a few more rounds of applause over there. So, Mohammed Mia, I see you. I'm going to invite you momentarily. But Setu, can I just ask you, as the representative for We Think Code, same question. Do you have anything you'd like to weigh in or add on to what Raymond has said?
Yeah, I'd definitely say public-private partnerships are the easy win. I think where government's strength is, building quite robust and thorough policy papers and coming with the resources that it can and the reach that it can. I think partnering with implementation partners in the way that Jobs Fund is doing with both organizations now is the easy win, right? Where people play to their strengths, essentially. I think from our side, we've seen the value of unlocking government partnerships to be able to scale the work that we do. So for example, We Think Code alone, because we are a campus-based learning program, to go and build a campus everywhere we go is just not sustainable. We don't have those kind of resources. But working alongside TVET colleges then changes the game, where they have this infrastructure that's national. We can now easily start to penetrate and accelerate the scaling process to reach more young people much quicker, with a lot less effort being put in individually, but synergistically able to create a much bigger impact.
I love that. I love that. I think all of us as Africans know that if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, we go together. And that's really what we are over here. Let's see some emojis there if you agree. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, let's go together. I do see both Mohammed and Tape. But before I invite you guys into the conversation, I want to ask our last panelist, Ntabaleng, you are an influencer of note. You are a force to be reckoned with in the creative space. So, your perspective on all of this, what are the easy wins over here as relates to, more government support? Because again, the Jobs Fund, we are the Hussein Bolt. We got first out the starting line, and now we need to pass the baton on. What needs to happen next?
I think I will take the broadband connectivity issues that we have in the country. Also, I think once we get an expansion and accessibility into our data because of really the digital industries based on the foundation of accessibility to data, accessibility to fiber, and also the speed thereof really is the basis of what cracks this industry. And I think a relationship between a broadband connectivity with government and industry would really assist, also develop and promote the business quicker, because more than anything, it's the issue of accessibility. Noting that there's now multiple ways of creating content, and it could be created from anywhere, but the foundation really. Internet has become everybody's office. And I think also, encouraging the development of digital skills, which will also include the training from an investment of education, training equipment, as well as to enforce them into the sector that could be affordably and reasonably accessible by everyone, so that we then create this open room for people to enter the market. And I think that's the basis of the first relationship, outside of the issues around policy, which it's a conversation for another day. But for me, the low-hanging fruit is really the accessibility to broadband. Having a lot of data centers, not even in advantaged communities, but also in the non-advantaged communities, because that's where really there's a higher population. So once we have training that is not only centered in the spaces where there is accessibility to equipment, we have data centers that are also in the rural and semi-rural spaces, where creativity does not really care where you stay, but creativity is creativity. And I think really accessibility and skills for me are the key and the primary foundations, which I think we need to look at, particularly from a government and intervention side. Because once you have those two, for me, I think there's nothing that is stopping creativity.
I agree with that. And I believe that many of you do as well, because I see all the emojis. Now, Mohammed Mia, Assalamu alaikum, my brother. My humble apologies. Your hand must be quite sore from holding it up that long. I'd like to invite you into the conversation. I'm the facilitator, so I get to give long preludes over there, but I'm going to humbly request that, okay, you hit them with the hard punches.
Okay, thanks a lot. First of all, well done to Najwa. It's been a long time since we had a chat. I'm from the National Empowerment Fund, an agency of the Department of Trade and Industry. Our new minister has also put a lot of aggressive targets regarding jobs, specifically the digital sector. And like, we're wondering, where do we find these sort of businesses that we can support? So basically, we do not do a lot of grant funding. We do loans, but at fairly, competitive rates if it meets our mandate. So hopefully we'd like to continue the engagement with some of the people in your panel, but bear in mind we need to fund businesses that are viable. So I think the Jobs Fund's done a great job to de-risk some of these things, to start entering the sector. But now the next level is, in other words, where do we find viable businesses that can be funded and scaled up? And we'd like to continue some of those discussions possibly going forward. Thank you.
Well, that's spectacular news. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mohammed. And ladies and gentlemen, this is really what we are talking about. This is what the Jobs Fund is all about. What we want to do is that we want to try and assist, to be a catalyst to take the best of the best out there and bring them to, the powers that be, so you can see what it is. So absolutely, like I said, all of this will be made available on our YouTube channel. And Mohammed, we're very happy as the Jobs Fund to facilitate ongoing discussions, between all and sundry, because yes, there definitely is a lot of potential there. Tape Rakwale, I humbly apologize if I butchered that name, but would you still like to come into the conversation? While we're waiting for that, though, there is an interesting conversation over here that comes from Monica. And Monica has asked, I'm going to read this out for you guys. Of the revenue being generated in the US from gaming, what is the market segmentation for education? What is the outlook on gaming and education in South Africa? That there's a high-grade question. I'm not even going to lie. So, would any of our panelists like to take a crack at it?
I fully
I
agree.
can try.
Yeah, okay, go for it, Ntuli.
Okay. The creatives industries really has gotten attention from everyone, and I would like to really recommend and congratulate the institutions of higher learning that are already teaching gaming, which is Academy of South Engineering as well as Vega. We also have Simologong, which is also a hub, which is part of the consortium. So the gaming industry is growing, particularly from the hubs, because a lot of people are not affording to pay education in the institutions of higher learning. Therefore, then the accelerator programs, as well as the gaming hubs that are in the province, then play the part of then being the educator, the mentor, as well as the placer into studios. And for now, what we seem to also be doing is that the small studios that we have are also taking in a lot of new entrants in the market to train them further, so that they equip them even more to ensure that they even start creating work that is quality work for them to then develop and grow the sector. And I think maybe Raymond, you can add on what I'm saying.
No, I was going to say it's quite a high-grade question because I'm not sure if I understood it correctly and if the question was around market segmentation for educational games in the US and what portion of the 59 billion goes towards the educational games. I don't have an answer for that because from the understanding of that market size in the US is that it obviously a portion is education, a portion is entertainment, right? So I don't have those specific details, but I do know that in South Africa, gamification and edutainment is a big opportunity. And if we're able to crack the biggest challenge with educational games that we've seen is really making the game fun for the kids to play, right? Because kids know, I mean, they're very clear. If you are trying to introduce in a sneaky way very educational components, but the game is not fun, they're just going to drop the game. So the key is really identifying how and the mechanics and ensuring that you can hook the kids. But if we're able to crack that 100%, that there's a lot of education that can run through games. And yeah, I mean, the industry in South Africa, like I said, it's still emerging. So there's still a lot of things we are also learning ourselves in the industry. But yeah, we'll get there with the right support.
Well, I mean, I think that's the beauty. Sorry, Ntabling, you were going to say?
No, I just wanted to respond to Mohammed regarding where do they get their companies that they could talk with in terms of the loans and the business support which they are providing. And I was just going to say we've got the consortium here, so those companies, they need enough support as starters. But I think also we also can encourage that if you could attend the Joburg Games Fest, we have a lot of companies that are coming to and studios who will be attending the festival, which will really require the help. And once we know, we can just call in maybe a few studio owners to then just introduce, so that they can then have ongoing conversations around the services at the outside of the festival.
Thank you so much. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what you call a smooth callback to an earlier discussion point. Do not forget about the Joburg Game Festival and, of course, Africa Games Festival as well, right? Both of those coming up. The first one, Joburg one, this weekend, and Africa Games Festival slightly later this year. Now, Setu, I want to ask you a question, and this is a bit of a latch on from a question that was asked by Nitu Chetty in the comments. And she was asking about when we talk about a hybrid model, right? And we have a hybrid model for scalability. Now, when it comes to actual training, you mentioned that you guys tend to favor a peer-to-peer model, and peer-to-peer model, that's one part of it, but a person can also work independently. Now, is there a risk of people using online resources getting sort of like halfway in the gate, but then after that becoming a danger to society? I'm paraphrasing heavily there, but I'm very, very fearful of a Terminator scenario. And how do we make sure that people are getting the right training, the right time, in the right way to do the right things?
Right. So I did see the word hybrid being used in the chat. I just want to clarify, our program isn't hybrid. So there isn't an option to learn remotely. All of the delivery items are done online because of the nature of the training that we do, which is coding. And so we have a learning management system, and that is the platform through which students engage to go and get their resources, their assignments, do their exams, submit assignments, and all of that. And so I guess it is hybrid in that way. I mean, through the nature of the training that we're doing, all of it is on the computer. And so our students are on campus but our students are on campus 40 hours a week. They clock in, they clock out, we monitor their attendance, because all of that plays a critical role in getting them work ready. And so I think, to your point, Zaid, the concern is that in South Africa, especially in the case of We Think Code, the young people that we are targeting aren't young people that have a home office. They aren't young people that have reliable connectivity and internet and Wi-Fi and all of that, and fiber, right? Some of them don't even have reliable electricity or a quiet room to themselves where they can learn, and it's a conducive environment for them to grow and develop in learning a skill that majority of our young people don't have prior experience on. And so for us, the on-campus experience is quite critical in making that transition a successful one, because our campuses, they even out the playing ground. Everybody has a computer here, we have Wi-Fi, electricity, and all of that, and they're around their peers that they can work with and get inspired by and offer help, ask for help, and support one another in their learning journey, which is also quite critical. And so I can't really speak to the remote learning aspect of it. I know there are models that work well for other demographics of young people, but I think in the case of the vast majority of South Africans, in particular those that remain unemployed and impacted by the unemployment issue, I think it's difficult for me to say that a hybrid model or even a remote model would work in that instance. And I think the reason why We Think Code has been as successful in 85% throughput rate, 87% permanent placement rate of our graduates is because of that very not rote learning, but very structured and rigorous on-campus learning environment.
Thank you so much. Now, there is a hand over there from Thabiso Tebe. Thabiso, can I invite you into the conversation?
And thank you to the presenters for an interesting presentation. Especially I enjoyed the piece around Roblox. So I'm just curious here, in terms of coding and gaming, how young can we get the youth? At what age can we get the youth to get started? For example, I know Rwanda has already started coding in their primary schools. Do we have any similar things like that here? And by doing that, does that mean we can get the youth into jobs quicker? So instead of them having to go through, say by high school even, would it be possible to actually get them into jobs from that age?
Yeah, I mean, the obviously the quicker we get kids into coding is crucial. There are platforms that are applicable and that are friendly for kids as young as 10 that can learn how to code, that they can learn the basics of game development. There are also non-tech ways to get kids to learn gaming. So for example, in the office, we always discuss this idea of paper prototyping, teaching young people to think about game ideas without even, needing a computer. just on a piece of paper, because then once you are able to get into that mindset of what is a game, how can a game be fun? And you can do that with just pieces of paper. Once you then apply the art, apply, the coding, apply the music and all the components of game development, you are onto a winner. So 100% young kids should be doing this from as early as possible. And I'm sure, Setu might have more to say around what's currently happening in that space from a schooling level.
Yeah, I mean, Within Code, we cater to tertiary level, so we're 17 to 35. But I think with regards to young people and exposure, I think, as Raymond mentioned, as soon as possible, right? I read an article where the OECD produced an article that talked about the correlation between exposure to computers, like computer literacy, and job prospects. And there's like 20% difference in your job prospects increase by 20% if you have prior exposure and over a longer period of time with computers, whether it's games or coding or whatever the case is. But I think the fundamentals of it is computer literacy, right? I think we can't understate the need for young people to be able to, whatever journeys that they may take in their work, to be able to learn how to use a computer, a QWERTY keyboard and all of that. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
I think
from
that.
Oh, okay. I was just going to chip in there, and I think I
Oh,
was
yeah,
just going to
please,
come in
please,
from
we can
a
go on,
different perspective to say, the little knowledge that I know with the Department of Education is that also they are doing whiteboarding education, which the intention is to start and commencing to then add curriculum that talk to digital learning. But some of the challenges of that initiative from government is that, one, it's very slow. But the issue that most of the schools which I know of that introduced digital learning, they were disturbed by crime, unfortunately. And they always steal the kids' iPads, which the Department of Education has bought. So those are the challenges. However, what is currently being communicated, particularly in Gauteng, is that we have, I think, about 3 schools per region. So regions in Gauteng are divided by City of Joburg, City of Tshwane, City of Ekurhuleni, the West Rand, and the South Rand. So in those 5 regions, there's about 3 schools that are training on digital and whiteboard digital education. However, I cannot really confirm that coding in particular is part of the curriculum, but it's something that I know that the Department of Education is keen on digitizing education. But to the extent in which the levels on how coding is being included or not, I really cannot be sure. But something is happening in terms of digital education. Thanks.
I think just quickly on that, just sorry, Zaid.
No, please.
I think what we need to remember is that coding, what underlies it is like problem-solving skills. So the sooner you can expose children to be able to solve problems and develop that dexterity to be able to think analytically and critically, you're almost there. And I think that is like a good starting point. So even if you don't have access and all of that to actually start the actual coding, if you can start with the principles of just problem-solving skills, I think that builds a strong foundation as well. Because that's where we start eliminating people at Within Code, is that online assessment that looks at that.
What this says to me, and thank you, and I'm very humbled by the fact that all of you are so polite in saying sorry Zaid. The reality of the thing is, you guys are the experts in this field, and if we're very, very frank about it, people have come here to sit at your feet and learn and listen to what it is that you're doing, because I think everyone across the board, the entire spectrum, really understands that here in South Africa we do have a few very unique challenges that are uniquely South African but are of universal application in the South African context, because we're talking about the digital divide, we're talking about lack of access, and these are fundamental things that need to be bridged and, I'm going to say, patched up before we can start walking the path, with much ease. But it's not bad news, it's good news, because the fact that we are asking these questions today and noting the conversation going on in the chat there, it's clear to me that people are thinking about this the right way, and the lenses are sort of starting to shift into place where we can start seeing the future, we can start seeing the potential, and the future and the potential are both here, they are both now. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I do regret that we've come to the end of this particular segment, the pause for questions and discussion. So we're going to move to finality, but a reminder once again, that all of this will be made available on our YouTube channel. And I invite you to go and check out this and other webinars as well. Now, the lovely lady you see on the screen over there, she is, of course, the trailblazer, the titan, the trendsetter. She is the pioneer, the prodigy, the powerhouse, and she is all of the other alliteration that I'm honestly too overwhelmed right now with the discussions we've had to run over there. She is Najwa Ali Idris. She is the head of the Jobs Fund. It is because of her vision, it is because of her being a pioneer and trailblazing that we are actually able to support projects like this. And as you can see, the need is there. So I want to see those emojis. I want to see love. I want to see all of that coming through as we once again say, ladies and gentlemen, introducing to you the mother of the Jobs Fund, Najwa Ali Idris. DDG, over to you.
Thank you, Zaid. People like Zaid make me get up in the morning, right? I mean, with that kind of support, who doesn't want to come to work? Thank you very much. Thank you to the audience. Thank you to all the participants in today's session. So many questions being asked, the questions being responded to so well by our panel. Raymond, Tavileng, Setu, thank you so much for really, making the time to share your insights with us today. But also, responding so well to the questions that are being asked of you. What comes up for me and what stands out in today's discussions is that there is such great potential in developing this particular sector, that we need partnerships. We've heard about the consortium that is in place. Nitu and others, you have been prolific in the questions and in your engagement in the session. I encourage all of you to see how can you join the consortium, how can you link up with each other, how can you partner, because it is only through partnership and having these institutional structures in place that we can continue to build. I think that what also stands out for me is that, there is still a gap in terms of early stage funding. So Muhammad has come in and he said, the NEF is looking for project pipeline, right? But they don't make available grant money, they make available loans. And so for those people who are ready to graduate as they, go through this process with our partners, there's opportunity. However, there's also still a funding gap in respect of early stage funding for these interventions. And we've got to look at, what doors do we continue to knock on? We've seen that there's potential over and above for creating jobs in our country, over and above creating new enterprises. This particular sector also offers great potential to achieve social impact at scale. And so it really is our responsibility to see how do we continue to build the sector. Setu has spoken about the number, and Tabileng has spoken about the number of vacancies that we have that we can potentially fill. I think as we look at that from an unemployment perspective, we must also have our eyes wide open that, whether we're going to be offering hybrid models of intervention, face-to-face models of intervention, we also need the educators to be up to speed and to come up to speed in terms of providing the education and the training. And of course, also a point made earlier that, we have to revisit our curriculum, right? Our school curriculum, our, universities, technical colleges. We need to have a serious reassessment. And I think that's one of the, that's one of the great challenges that we have in South Africa, in that we have this massive mismatch between what industry is looking for and the skills that we currently have, and we really have to link that to the country's growth plan. What do we see as those markets that we want to enter? What are those markets that we want to be competitive in? And taking that back to our education and saying, well, then how do we become more agile in responding? There was a question earlier about, is this training accredited? Again, here, it is an important question. However, it also says that we need to revisit our paradigm around, being able to offer accredited training, but also being able to respond to market demand in a much more agile fashion, and making training available when it is needed, to the extent that it is needed, and making sure then that those people who have gone through the training have had on-the-job experience to carry that forward, and to create a stickiness in the labor market where you don't just have churn all the time because people don't have the right skills, they don't have the right approach to being employed. So on that note, once again, really, really informative, a deep appreciation to the presenters here, deep appreciation to the participants for enriching our discussion, and of course, appreciation to Zaid, our facilitator, and the Jobs Fund team who makes all of this possible. I wish all of you a really great afternoon ahead. Thank you very much.